I guess we have to hang out until this thing populates.
Yeah.
Go back on my Instagram. Tell everybody we are now live.
Kendra's posting on her social media, and every time we've been trying to get back to doing this for the last 3 weeks, we've had umpteen surprises. There it is.
Yes, Grace.
You see it on screen?
Grace is there. Good old Grace. Reliable Grace.
Reliable Grace.
At least you're all right to hang with. Jake's in. Cool. Thanks for showing up. We hadn't run them all off, Jake.
Thank you, guys. All right. Oh, there's 12 people on. Hi, everybody.
Mr. Butch.
I missed you guys. We missed you guys. Who else on here? Hey. Hollow Hills Kennel.
Spent last weekend with Mr. Butch in Alabama doing a basic seminar, and I guess he hadn't got tired of me yet.
How'd your seminar go?
It was really, really good. It was a really good group, a receptive group, and folks that wanted to get better. When you get that kind of group together, great things happen. It was a good time all the way around.
So were y'all doing that in the middle of an ice storm?
It wasn't where we were. I mean, the South didn't get hit the way everybody else did, and so I was just east of Birmingham, and it was cold in the mornings. I think we had low 20s one morning and mid 20s the next, but we all huddled up around the fire and got after it.
Very good. I'm gonna have to plan to come down to Taylor Farm sometime this spring, probably within the next 2 months. I may just pack my son up and my dog and a sleeping bag and head your way. I want to get down there before it gets hot. I do not want to be down there in July or August. Not going to happen.
I can promise you the road does run all the way from your house to mine. I can testify to that.
I know you've done that. Mr. Tom Foreman, how's it going? Miss Elaine, Mr. Butch, Lumberjack Waterfowl, Hollow Hill Kennels. How's everybody doing? We missed you guys. Sorry that this has taken so long to reboot. We've all been busy. We've all been crazy. COVID took its toll. Time management has taken its toll on me. I've got kids that have it's just crazy times, and traveling quite a bit now with Bassmaster and all that good stuff too. So we apologize for slacking and letting this thing go. It's mostly my fault, so I'll take full responsibility for it. Steven's just doing Steven. But here we are. We're going to try to be consistent with this. Can't make promises that we're going to be every Tuesday night, but we're going to do our best. We did build a new YouTube channel, which we're trying to sync up with our live platform here. But we had technical issues today, obviously. So that's what I get for trying to do this at the last minute. But nevertheless, we are going to try to get this worked out. Kendra's probably going to swoop in here with her Wonder Woman cape and save us from our digital deficiencies. But has anyone noticed anything new about Steven?
Not a thing.
What's that?
Not a thing.
Steven got his hair cut.
No, got my ears lowered.
Got his ears lowered. And you did that for charity, Steven?
Yeah, we usually. If I'm gonna grow it that long, I might as well do it for a reason. I never grew my hair long until I was in my 30s, and it wasn't intentional. It was just we got so busy, and then I realized there were certain benefits like the sun not being on my neck, and so we figured if it was gonna be long and I was gonna cut them all off, I might as well do it for a reason. Now me and Grace can be friends. I guarantee you Grace is a fan of my shorter hair.
That's funny. So, one of the things that I think is going to get us started this year, back in the groove of the retriever connection, is talking about, we left off last year with, all the drills and homework that Tanner and I did, and all the things that we worked on really hard this last summer came into fruition during hunting season. And, all the lining drills, down the shore blinds, the no drill, all those things came into play, and Tanner did really well. Imagine that. He did what we trained him to do. However, we did have some shortcomings that, I didn't really anticipate this year, that ended up being not necessarily season-long issues, because Superman Steven came out during hunting season. We got a couple things straightened out while he was there for 3 days or 4 days. So we're going to talk about the things that we did right and why we did them right. And we're going to talk about things that we didn't do right because we didn't train for them. And then I think that's going to set us up for our new training season. What are you thinking, Steven?
Well, it was really neat to me. You and I were talking during hunting season, and I was getting a little bit of feedback here, a little bit of feedback there. Tanner's doing great on this, but I really wish, I could get this under control, or this is kind of, to be honest with you, Jake, you didn't, whether you intentionally did this or not, really relay the sense of hopelessness that you kind of, there was a, when I got there and we got to talking and I looked at you face to face, I realized how disheartened you were in one regard, how much you loved your dog, but how much you felt like, y'all weren't necessarily on the same page. You did make the reference to me. You did make the reference that everything we had worked on, he was doing really well. All his blinds, on his marks, all those conceptual aspects were doing really well, but you just were having a little trouble holding the whole package together. Like I said, it was a little bit of a wake-up call to me about, I don't know if you cried out for help and I just missed it, or you just didn't quite throw it out there loud enough that, hey, this is a problem for me. And I think it was really neat it was I don't know if you call it a case study or just a social experiment to watch, the problem that you were dealing with was not that you didn't get the dog you thought you were getting. I gave you exactly what I told you were getting, and you were like, you were 100% correct. And what really made this whole thing jump to me when we were talking, as you said, it took me till this year to see his bad behaviors, or to see what you were talking about with a couple of different things, which told me that, y'all might have been on a little bit of a downward spiral as far as y'all's relationship goes. Like I said, it was to see so much frustration. It was almost like watching a parent that was struggling with a child. It didn't mean that you didn't love. It's not that you didn't love them any less. You were just trying to get this whole thing figured out. Mm-hmm. The good news was, guys, is that what Jake had worked on, Tanner did exceptionally well. Not just to Jake's standard, quite frankly, to my standard as well. Watching him work in the field, it was a pleasure. To say it any other way would do it injustice. He was a basket case at the line. He was a basket case of apprehension, of anxiety, and it wasn't that he didn't want to do the work. It was the opposite. He wanted to make the work happen and happen yesterday. So, and Jake was not helping Tanner define his world. So the reason that Jake, in my opinion, struggled here was that Tanner and Jake's nature are very contrary. Jake is not, to say, how do I say this?
I'm a nice guy.
There you go. There you go. Which obviously means I'm not, right? So, Jake was trying to love Tanner through, this issue. He was trying to show Tanner what he wanted and get a positive result when he really needed to just add structure to Tanner's life and show Tanner who was in charge, and then let the chips fall where they may. So the best part, in my opinion, of the whole trip was that we had a lull in between groups where it could just be me and Jake and Brandon, and we could fake hunt, essentially. You know, we could put on everything. The thing that is irreplaceable in this experience is the fact that dogs are associative learners. You can go and practice at the neighborhood pond, but it's not the same as the real deal. And Tanner knows when the lights are on and it's time to go. He understands that. So we got to go out there, put out decoys, get in the blind, put him in his hide, call, get down like birds were coming over the top of us, and simulate the whole experience. And do that without having customers there. We could actually train hunting. And what a valuable experience it was, you know, not just for Tanner, but I even think more for Jake. So it was a great experience to see Jake struggle, to see him frustrated, and to literally see within 5 minutes him go, that's the dog I know. That's my buddy. And immediately them get on the same page and everything get comfortable, including Tanner. Tanner was not less happy about the structure that we added to his life. Tanner was not upset about the restrictions we put on him. He was actually relieved.
He was more clear and less confused.
And this goes back to what I was saying about, you know, I preached this all last weekend, that dogs are genetically programmed to challenge authority. It has nothing to do with affection. It has nothing to do with if they love you or if they like you or if they're happy being where they are. It has nothing to do with any of those factors, and everything to do with the fact that they have to have a defining factor in their life. That it's that simple. And Tanner was not, you were not defining life for him. And therefore he felt like he had to rage until he found either he defined his world or he had to find something that did. And when I stepped in and we added structure there, it immediately allowed him to get comfortable again. So
it did.
To say it a different way, you may not, your form of discipline in your, I'm not to say that you're not a disciplinarian, but your form of discipline didn't register on Tanner's recognition scale. Y'all are very different animals. And I mean that as far as in an animalistic nature, your nature and Tanner's are polar opposites. Mm. And it's great because he is challenging you more than you're challenging him. And it's going to make you a better dog owner, not just for Tanner, but for every other dog that you ever have. It's going to open your eyes as to, you know, because the next one may not be Tanner. Matter of fact, you already have another one who is absolutely not Tanner in a bunch of different ways. So Coy is everything that Tanner's not in some respects. You know, she's not the bold defier that Tanner is. But like I said, over and over again, guys, the same thing that makes a dog good is the same thing that makes him bad. And at the end of the day, Tanner's drive to do the work what was making him struggle with you, but also making his work so fine to watch.
I mean, you know, taking everything that you just said, Stephen, and wrapping that up into one concise gesture from my perspective would be that Tanner is the dog that I need. Tanner's the dog that I want. I didn't know that. And I didn't know how to, like you said, I didn't know how to structure that. It wasn't that my frustration really wasn't more about Tanner than it was about me not knowing what to do. And I'm going to tell you guys, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm telling you, and I give you my word, this is honest truth. When we got to the issues that I was most struggling with, and let's just call them what they are. Tanner was breaking and Tanner was whining badly. Okay. And it was to the point to where, you know, the rock and the hard place that I was in between was, okay, how much pressure can I put on my dog when I've got paying clients in front of me that may or may not understand what pressure means. All right. And then I didn't know, what does that mean? A continuous burn at the highest level of impulse that a collar will give until what? Until, like, what am I supposed to look for to know when to back off of that continuous pressure? Or was it a healing stick? Was it, what was it? I didn't know. I really, honest to God, did not know what the deal was. So Steven shows up and we go out to the pit, and it's just me and him and Brandon. Brandon's, filming or observing, and Steve and I are talking. And within 15 seconds, Steven solved the problem. And I exaggerate. I exaggerate. It's probably more like 9 seconds. And
well, don't forget, it happened because we allowed it to happen naturally. We did set him up, but we did the whole shebang. We set up decoys. We put all the straw over the pit. We called. We relaxed. We called again. We did everything. So when Jake says Tanner's breaking, he may have been breaking, but one of the worst things he was doing is coming out of his hide. One of the cool things about North Platte River hunting is that they have these awesome buried in the ground hides where the dogs literally jump down into a barrel and all that's sticking up is their head.
He's got his own pit.
Exactly. It's a miniature pit. So he wasn't always breaking, but he was always, when everybody came out of the pit, when Jake called the shot, he would jump up and sit right by the pit and wait on. All he was trying to do was get a better vantage point, really. So
never broke out into the decoys. And what you just said is key, and I need to verify that. He didn't break and blow out and put himself in danger, so to speak, unless someone swung to the left or swung to the right where he was. He got, like Steven said, he popped up like a jack in the box. He popped up out of the pit and sat, and then he was steady. But that was a problem because that's not what we wanted him to do. So go ahead, Steven.
Well, and there's a multitude of reasons why that's a problem. He could get shot. No, let's not forget that. And
he's above eye level at that point.
But here's the secondary thing. We want Tanner to have a long and illustrious career. And most of those pits are set up right where the dog's either straight out the side or even back a little bit. When he's jumping up and sitting right next to y'all, he's also getting right next to all the barrel blast. And that's going to affect his hearing in the long run. So it's actually taking away from the longevity of his career. So
it's not fair to him.
It's not fair to him. It's not fair to you. And he wasn't. Guys, when I tell you that this was an impressive hunting dog, I saw some incredible dog work. His ability to mark not just singles, but multiple birds is pretty impressive. There's a lot of ups here, but he was literally going insane if he stayed in the box. He was exploding out of it. So that didn't just happen in the recessed blinds. It also happened in some of the other situations, like where he's in a mow marsh blind and he can't see well. He was trying to get out. Every time that he was moving, it was all related to him trying to be able to see better, to do his job better.
Exactly.
So it's a little bit understandable the struggle he was having, because all he was doing at the end of the day, he wasn't trying to break per se, but he was trying to get away from where you left him. All the vocalization was frustration about trying to get away, and all the movement was an attempt to get where he could be in the, what he felt like the best possible position to pick up the birds. So
at the end of the day, it's bad line behavior, though, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. Yeah,
100%. And some of that can be, in some of your situations that we saw, you can say that's a poor setup for him to be successful because he couldn't see. That is understandable. But especially in those pit blinds where Darcy's been sitting here holding my hand and eating supper, and she just wants some of daddy.
That was pretty funny. It's like the thing on the Munsters. Remember that? The hand. Hi.
So how everybody's asking, okay, we're talking around it now. How do we fix it? Well, we fixed it by allowing him to do that bad behavior until I didn't try to nitpick him. I didn't try to make him be quiet at the start. We called and we got down on it. We got down in, and finally we called a shot and we all popped up. And when Tanner popped up, pressure was applied with the collar. And I'm watching his reaction. And immediately he said he wanted to sit for a second. And then he said, no, I got to get back in that box. And when he turned around and dove back in the box, then I took the healing stick and I never really hit him, but I swung right across his nose, right in front of him to establish the barrier that I'm looking for. And I, 3 or 4 times wrapped across the front of that box. So if he did stick his nose out, it was going to clip him, but that was not my intent. My intent was simply to say, don't come past this line. And like Jake said, it was less than 10 seconds, less than 15 seconds worth of correction, and it undid almost 2 months worth of frustration. And what really drove home to me how much of a struggle Jake was having is for the rest of the time when Tanner's being a model citizen. Not only was he being a model citizen, but you could actually see his vocalization start. He would start panting, his tongue would start hanging out, and then he'd start, and it would start getting worse and worse and worse. He literally quit breathing through his mouth. He put his chin on the edge of the box, and he just watched. And I looked over at Brandon, and Brandon said, I didn't know he could do that. Brandon was like, I've never seen this dog before. And at that point, I realized just how frustrated Jake must have been dealing with a dog that was spiraling out of control and with clients that he didn't, obviously you don't want to – Jake doesn't want to be hard on his dog, period, guys. Whether there's a paying client there or not, he doesn't want to do these things. But that was what Tanner was needing. That was what Tanner was asking for. That's what Tanner got. And then he just totally hit the switch and I don't know how he was through goose season and all, but he was some kind of good dog after that for us.
Well, we had a different issue during goose season that we'll get to a little later, but what I didn't know, what Steven did was he showed him where the line was. Okay. And I didn't, with me, the line is me get out of the pit, him come to heel, and then I send him from that line. Okay, so ultimately, when he popped out of his pit, he was there and he was stable and steady. The birds are hitting the ground. He's marking everything, and like Steven said, his marking ability is incredible. I mean, I was blown away. There's a couple of times where I had to turn around because I had to shed a tear because my dog was doing this incredible work, at a very high level. And passing up poison birds to go after long 250, 300 yard sailing birds. And then when Steven showed me what to do, then all of a sudden what registered with me was he just showed him where the line was. He showed him where his imaginary goal line is, and he can't cross this barrier, and Tanner understood it immediately. And so what registered with me then was I just didn't know how to do that. I didn't know what to do. When Steven showed me, everything else got better really, really fast. Like there maybe that was one of the most eye-opening experiences I've had with any kind of creature in terms of how they respond and how you teach some. I don't think he taught him anything. He just readdressed it and rebooted Tanner.
Yeah, we hit the hard reset button.
And again, I want people to know that. So the frame, the top of the pit is the 2x4 frame. Okay, that's the box that he goes in. That's the opening that he goes inside. So when Stephen came down with the healing stick, he whacked that front 2x4 on the front of the box, and it was whack, 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 whack. Okay. And Tanner cowered down into the box like, ooh, I don't want to get my nose caught up in that guillotine. So he settled down and he never hit Tanner. There was no physical contact. He just showed him where that line was with lots of enforcement, lots of authority. And this is where he never said one word to him. And man, I'm telling you what, it turned him around and changed him. And I thought to myself, oh yeah, just like I was telling you, Stephen, this dog's perfect for me.
It was really amazing because it was like, hey, that's the dog I used to know. I mean, it was literally like you were looking at a whole different animal. And I guess in a way, behavior-wise, you were. Because, I mean, if I'd only known how bad it was, I could have been up there way before. We could have fixed it that quick, anytime, anywhere,
Exactly.
I
don't know. I wasn't trying to hold back, in terms of expressing, because I've never done that with you. I mean, I'm very forthcoming and open, in this whole friendship and everything that goes on in my life. I'm not scared to tell you that this is the issue. I don't know why, I didn't communicate that to you, but whatever happened, thank you, Stephen. That was a really eye-opening experience for me. And like I said, like we've talked about this whole show so far, Tanner did so many things right. Like Tanner is a badass dog. I mean, he is exactly, when Stephen mentioned him to me before I bought him, he said, man, this dog needs to go to a high volume outfitting service and he's not going to come back without the duck. This dog is hard charging, high energy, and everyone that sees him goes, wow, that dog has got some serious drive. And that's what he does. And like Stephen always says redundantly, what makes Tanner so good is exactly what makes him so bad, where he has so much anxiety. He wants, like, every 10 seconds, he wants a dead bird on the ground and he wants to blow out of that hole and just go get him and bring him back. And then he would sit there and do that all day long in negative 10-degree weather with 12 inches of snow on the ground. There's no stick. And I'm going to quote Stephen, there's no stick big enough for Tanner, and there's no element strong enough to take Tanner down. He is a super dog. But I think, we are going to work on those things, and I'm going to have to go back to Prairie Rock more often this spring and summer to train with him there to make sure that those things are very clearly written for him, those rules inside those pits. And I just think it's better training ground for him anyway, because that's where we hunt,
There's a couple of really good questions, but before we get to those, what was really neat to me, and you asked a really cool question. So the next day, we went to a different pit, and it was a not ideal location for the dog box. This was a pit that y'all didn't put in, that was in existence when y'all took over the place, and the dog box was absolutely mounted in the wrong place, because it, instead of being mounted directly behind the pit, it was actually mounted directly in front of the pit. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah.
So the dog was actually in a less than perfect position to do the work. He could see really well, but one of the only saving graces there was they had a flip top on this particular box, so that you opened a smaller hole that the dog could not literally jump out of. So he'd stick his head through that hole and he could watch, and then you open the bigger lid and then he could jump out. That was the only thing that kept him out of harm's way, but he was still catching, in my opinion, too much shotgun blast. But we were dealing with what we had to deal with. But we were out there working, and Tanner was holding it together. He was a whole different dog just from the correction the day or two before. And Jake was sitting directly behind him. That was one thing that was nice for Tanner, is that Jake was doing all the call and he wasn't shooting, and he was directly behind Tanner, so he wasn't catching as much of the blast. So when things got slow, Tanner would turn around and look at Jake and just stare at him. And Jake finally turned around and looked at me and said, "Why is he doing this?" He was expecting the hard panting, the anxious dog that's always staring out into the horizon. And Tanner's turning around and staring at Jake. And I said, the reason he's doing that is because he's recognizing who's in charge. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
And so the point to be made there was that Tanner, again, going back to natural instinct, dogs, if they respect you, if they appreciate your presence, they don't like to turn their behind to you, because that's the vulnerable part of them. If I turn, in a dog's world, if I turn my behind to you, you can injure me, you can hurt me, you can kill me. And Tanner was wanting to turn around and kind of keep his eye on you rather than just take you for granted and just essentially, dogs are linear animals. And what I mean by that is that you're either leading or you're following. It's like climbing up a ladder. You're not standing side by side. Even when they are sitting next to you, in their mind, they're either ahead of you or behind you. So ironically, the day before, when he was going crazy, before we put him in check, even though he was behind you, part of why he was so anxious and moving so much is because he wanted to get ahead of you. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
He's fighting.
He does that. He wants to be. I mean, if there's another dog there, he's in front of the dog. If we're walking to the blind, he wants to be in front. He wants to be the lead dog in a dog sled race constantly. That's his goal, right?
So the next day, when we actually sat him in front and he was mentally in check, he kept looking back at you because he was recognizing you were ahead of him. It's kind of, we didn't do that intentionally, and you didn't recognize what was going on, but he was saying, hey, you're supposed to be the one ahead of me, not vice versa.
Yeah, I remember that. And I remember, again, these are all philosophical concepts that, you don't just know, you don't know, or you don't understand. You either have to have someone with a lot of experience, like I have with Steven, tell me that, or you have to go through this really long learning curve with a lot of different dogs to understand that, like Steven's already done. So, the fact that all of us have someone, a pro trainer, Steven, or you've got all this experience yourself, these are things that are assets to us. And it's something that I'm really grateful for, because I'm learning not just about Tanner, but I'm learning about other dogs. And I recognize things about other dogs that I never have, because Steven's sharing all this information with me. So, it's been a huge asset to me. And when I forget, let me see, when that happened, did anything else happen that day or that next day with Tanner in front?
Outside of that incredible, he made like 3 or 4 really nice marks, but he had one where we had that sailor that went across the channel we were hunting, across the field, and into that next river channel, and he disappeared and was gone for a good while.
I got to say this too. I remember specifically, when he took off, when I sent him, I remember Steven saying, man, if he comes back with this bird, I forget exactly what you said, but it was something like, this is going to be a big boy. If he picks this bird up, this is a big boy retrieve right here. This is the real deal. And he stayed. He crossed the channel we hunted. He crossed a field. He crossed another small channel, came back up, did not break down on the there was a big willow thicket there up against the riverbank. and he didn't break down and start hunting on that line. He went into the cover, and how long was he gone? Probably 8 or 10 minutes.
Several minutes.
Yeah, 8 or 10 minutes. He was disappeared. So there was no handling, and it wasn't that I just let him hunt, because if I'd seen him, I probably would have blown a whistle and handled him out of inexperience. But because I couldn't see him, I couldn't handle him, or I didn't want to handle him, I just let him hunt naturally. And about 8 or 10 minutes later, here he comes up out of that second ditch over the top with the bird in hand. And I think that was one of my teary-eyed moments that
well,
you and Leo didn't see.
I specifically asked you, if I hadn't been here, how would you have handled that? And your words were, I would have probably followed him out there and tried to help him and probably handled. And that was everything. What happened there was exactly what I wanted to see happen. We did catch glimpses of him. You know, he'd come up and then he'd disappear again. But we do that too much in training, and I think we do it too much in hunting. You know, that's why we do all that work. He saw it fall. He knew where it was. Quite frankly, he knew where it was better than you and I, because that thing might not have been dead when it hit the water. And he had a lot of searching to do, not to mention that there was current. It was impressive to watch. And you got a little bit anxious. You know, he was a little bit too happy to leave that time. You were too happy to snatch that lid off and cut him loose. That's, again, you didn't let him calm down before you sent him. And I think that's part of why he spiraled out of control on you so quickly, is that rather than you embracing him calming down before you sent him, you were trying to let him go to keep it from getting worse. When really, if you would have made him wait longer, more consistently, he wouldn't have been exploding as much. Make him mentally calm down before you sent him. Now, all that being said, I'd have probably sent him a little bit quick on that one too, because that was a long ways.
It was a long ways, and it was a cripple in current.
That's right.
There was a lot of different variables going on there that were working against not us, but Tanner for sure.
So Miss Elaine said, how did Tanner react to the correction? And don't let me forget, one of the other things that did start happening, I think this is what you were referencing in goose season, is that he quit vocalizing on the duck calls, but he was starting to vocalize on goose calls, which is ironic that he can actually, we don't give him
differentiate.
Differentiating well. Mm-hmm. So Miss Lane said, how did Tanner react to the correction? Is the correction something Jake could repeat in front of company if needed? Tanner's reaction was really quick, you know, really appropriate. Really appropriate. And I do believe that this is a correction that Jake could have repeated in front of company, and even more so because it would not take nearly as much next time to get him in line. I mean, that was kind of, you know, I give everybody the analogy of touching a hot stove. If you've ever touched a hot burner, every time you touch it from then on, whether it's on or off, you have that momentary of it was hot, and you remember that. And that was exactly the memory that I was looking to instill in Tanner, that, you know, if you take him to that extreme and you make a good impression, normally you don't have to keep revisiting that level if you make the appropriate correction in the first place.
I mean, truth be known, when I pull the healing stick out now, he knows that tool as well as he knows the collar. And so when I pull the healing stick out now, like before I even say anything, he comes straight, he comes to heal. Like you can it's almost like he has a collar on when I pull the healing stick out. So he understands that much, that, you know, he understands it enough to conceptualize what's about to happen if he doesn't comply to the situation. And to elaborate on what Stephen was saying, from my perspective, Miss Elaine, is yes, I did repeat that in front of company, paying clients as the season progressed, particularly during the late part of dark goose season. because I had to. And what I did was I addressed it with my clients, and I said, look, I'm not physically hitting my dog. You guys are going to hear something and think that I'm being rough, but you got to understand I'm drawing a line for him in the sand here. And this is how I was taught to do it. So I blamed everything on Stephen. and I drew the line in the sand for Tanner in front of clients, and they all understood. They could clearly see that I wasn't being physical with my dog, but that I was being demonstrative with my dog. And it worked.
That was real quick.
And Tom Foreman, he says, my dog does the same thing in his Momarsh blind. I try to get him to lay down when working birds, but he always wants to sit up for a better view. I've actually seen birds flare when they're about to land. I'm going to let the pro trainer address that, and then I'll give you some examples of what happened to me in the same scenario, Tom.
Well, I think to answer Tom's question, and don't forget Lumberjack Waterfowl coming back to you. To answer Tom's question, you're not practicing. Whoa. Gracious.
I hear dishes.
No, that was a refrigerator door slamming open with a 2-year-old. Hurricane Levi. Hey, look. What you want to see? You want to say, hey, Mr. J?
Levi, what's up, dog?
How about that?
Dude, that is a Shirley Temple curl right there.
Go get your milk.
That's a 5-year-old greenhead.
Yes, indeed. So, Mr. Tom, to answer your question, I would venture a guess here, and I could be wrong, but my guess is that you haven't practiced making him lay down all the way through if you can't do this hand throwing marks or having somebody else hand throw marks for you and simulating as much as you can hunting situations and him stay down, then you certainly can't ask for it or correct for it in a hunting situation. If you haven't practiced this, if you haven't perfected it in practice, you cannot ask for it in a hunting situation. So, for lack of a better way of saying it, if I've got a dog that doesn't want to stay down the whole time, I'm going to make it where he can't stand up. Take a tie-out stake and drive it in the ground and put a 3-inch chain on it and obviously teach him to lay down. And when he lays down, that stake is right by his collar, snap him down. So he has to lay down and understand that, fighting through that's not going to help him. I have dogs, one in particular I can think of, they snow goose hunt and they want the dog to be able to lay down in the spread and then throw a white sheet over him in amongst a bunch of snow goose decoys so that the dog's got to lay down for the whole time. Different dogs take laying down very differently. Some really resent it. Some have no problem with it. I think a lot of it is how the dogs talk in conjunction with their natural disposition. So the answer to that, Mr. Thomas, you need to practice it more before you go to game time with it. I can't say that loud enough. And if you're still having trouble, set a tie-out stake out there and tie him down where he can't jump up and where you can easily unclip him when it's time to go. You had something you're going to add in on that, Jake?
Yeah, I was going to say that, and I'm not addressing this to you, Mr. Tom, but I'm addressing this to all people that aren't dog trainers, that don't know, that probably think they know more than they do. I am one of those people. I've been waterfowl hunter for 47 years, and I thought, I've hunted with lots of dogs over that time. And there's something that I had to do when I embarked on this journey with Tanner and Stephen, which was concede to two things: concede to my own ignorance and concede to my own ego, because I had to be able to swallow both of those pills before I could learn properly. I had to be able to say, I don't know how to do this. Will you please help me? And that's ego. That's conceding to my ego and conceding to my ignorance. So once I got to that point, I started learning things. I don't learn lessons as much as I've learned, like the concept of build your lesson so that, like Steven says, there's different ways to do that, whether it's a 3-inch chain or you put, whatever it is, you shrink the box or whatever you do, you make it easier for your dog to understand what he's supposed to do by restructuring the situation you put him in, and going back to training itself, not in the field. Like, it's almost like if someone doesn't know how to blow a duck call or a goose call, why are you doing it while we're hunting? Why don't you do that in your truck when you're not around other people, right?
Exactly.
And so, all those things were very helpful to me, and I still don't understand, like, if I were going to build a set of steps for the front of my house, am I going to build a corner step? Am I going to build 3 long steps or 5 short steps? How am I going to angle this? I don't know what's best because I'm not a builder. And I think that comes into play with dog training too. If I don't know how to do something, when I ask Steven and he addresses it, the answer is so simple, it's crazy. And I'm thinking too hard and thinking too far beyond what the obvious is, when really the answer is right in front of your eyes. If he won't lay down, make him lay down. And if you can't control that because you're calling ducks or calling geese and you're working with clients, then you have to create something that keeps him down so that he understands. And you go through it a couple of times, all of a sudden he's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to lay down for this because I can't go anywhere. And then all of a sudden it starts to conceptualize over repetition and redundancy, and boom, it starts to register. So again, my point is, from my perspective, the ignorant dog handler perspective is, be open-minded to your own ignorance. If you don't know, ask someone, a professional trainer, how to deal with it, or think more simply than trying to figure something complicated out, because it's really a lot more simple than you think.
So, Miss
Is that
Elaine,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Miss Elaine made reference to something that I teach this in my seminars a lot. I make the statement without a preface. I say, make the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard. And then I roll back and say, guys, there's 2 types of ways that you can take that. I'll even go as far as saying there are 2 types of people who heard this. One type of person heard, when the dog does something wrong, you make it painful, and when they do it right, you make it a nice experience. That is not what I am trying to touch on. I want to make the right thing easy to do and the hard thing hard to achieve. And that's what comes to foundation from all at the very beginning. And this leads me back up to lumberjack waterfowl. It's all about the foundation. It's all about the fundamentals. And when you make a comment like, how do you correct this if your dog is soft and cannot take a lot of collar pressure? Well, the answer to that is that the appropriate correction is directly related to the appropriate level of disobedience that the dog is exercising. If the dog's not asking for a large correction, that doesn't mean you have to give it to him. Tanner was begging for somebody to put him in check. He was no different than a wild child that was acting out, looking for attention. And I could apply whatever level of collar pressure necessary, because I am falling back on Tanner's foundation and understanding of how to turn off pressure. So all dog training breaks down to the basic concept of a dog having a positive response to pressure, whether it be physical pressure, electric pressure, mental pressure. The more we do advanced dog training, the more advanced you get in your concepts, the more you move into mental pressure before you ever touch on any other type of pressure. A dog's understanding of how to change their behavior to give a desired response is ultimately what we're trying to elicit in our foundation work. So when you say, oh, my dog can't take a lot of collar pressure, they all have different tolerance levels for pressure. But if they haven't been taught to tolerate pressure and respond accordingly, that goes back to your foundation and how you trained your dog. And this is where the big jump off you usually see between a professionally trained dog and an amateur trained dog. I had a client years ago that said, Stephen, the difference between you and I when it comes to training is when I'm saying, oh, this might be a little bit much, and start backing off, you're digging your heels into saying, now we're fixing the problem. Now we're addressing the issue. And his point was that I usually take it a little bit farther than he was comfortable with to get a galvanized response and understanding so that we can move on and not just keep on revisiting the same issue over and over and over again. Ultimately, foundation work is not about teaching a dog to sit. It's not about teaching a dog to fetch. It's not about collar conditioning your dog. That's the simple, obvious steps. What foundation work is about is teaching a dog how to problem solve advanced concepts, putting the foundation in place where they can understand how to modify their behavior in order to problem solve their way through a situation. Period.
Dude, that's so well said, Stephen. It's not about beating a slave. It's about teaching your child how to do something with discipline. And people get this misconception about pressure. And, at least from my perspective, and I'll bet you 7 out of 10 people, maybe 10 out of 10 people that were in my shoes feel the same way. It's not that I'm scared to put pressure on my dog because I don't know. It's about not about my ignorance making me confused about whether I'm going to ruin my dog or not. That's what the fear of pressure comes from. It's like, God, what am I doing here? And seeing it firsthand and the correct way to do it is so eye-opening. And it's like one time I asked when we first had our first child, Aspen, I contacted my friend Grant Hillman down in Louisiana because I've seen him spank his child, and I asked him. My parents spanked me, and I'm glad that they did. And I remember asking Grant when my first child was born, "How do you feel about spanking your child?" And he said, "You got to pick and choose when you do it, and when you do it, you better make it count so you don't have to do it again." And that's the whole key to the whole thing, right? I mean, it's the same thing with dogs, like you said earlier with the healing stick. It wasn't about having to do it over and over again. It was about rebooting Tanner. He understood what it was. He saw it. You gave it to him, and he didn't do it again. And so, it was so valuable for me to understand. And I will encourage all of you people out there that are watching this or that are going to watch this at a later time. If you don't know what you're doing, concede to your own ignorance, concede to your own ego, and go ask someone. Come on here and ask us these questions. Ask Stephen. Ask a local pro trainer. Ask someone reputable that knows what they're doing. They've been doing it for a long time. Their credentials don't mean as much about their trophy case as it does tell you how accurate they're going to be with their answers because they know what they're doing. So, reach out to those people and ask if you don't know, and do not be shy, because if you do, you're only hurting yourself and you're hurting your dog.
Well, I think that's probably the basis of why you and I had got along so good from the start, is because even though you had so much experience and you had really good dogs, going by your metric of what a good dog was, you'd had really, really good dogs, and you were open to the fact that there was a different world out there, that there was, a level of dog work that you may have never seen before. And, by you checking your ego, you've got to experience a whole different level. Let's be honest, if we had to spend the last year talking about this together, Tanner would have probably been an out of control maniac all the way across the board. Not just at the line, but in the field as well, because you had more than you could handle. You putting the time in, the effort in to learn has allowed y'all to have a much better relationship, and you still, are looking at the tip of the iceberg. You can see a whole lot more than you could last year. But,
for sure.
Going back to that huge correction, that was a huge correction that rocked his world, that rocked your world, but it was nothing that he was not prepared for. in his basic training. That's what I can't say loud enough. It's not like, here's the first time you've ever felt a collar. Here's the first time you've ever felt a stick, and I'm going to fix all this. It's not that at all. You know, you made the comment earlier that when he sees the stick, all of a sudden he gets more in line. How is that any different from your mom pulling the paddle out and sitting it on the couch and saying, if you don't act right, this is going to be next?
She didn't even have to say a word. Since she grabbed the paddle, it was like, okie dokie.
Exactly.
Same response. Exactly.
It is the same response, 100%. You know,
and you know, Mr. Who was it? Lumberjack Waterfowl. Going back to that question, and please stop me and correct me if I say something inappropriate, Stephen. But no, so Stephen mentioned Coy. My other, we have a black lab that I share with Adam Campbell down in Alabama, and she's back in training now, but she was with me during hunting season, and I split time with Tanner and Coy. Extremely different dog, total opposite, black female, you know, soft, high drive dog, yes, extremely responsive to correction, and she's pretty soft. So the collar pressure, I want to say two things about it. One is you got to have the right tools. I didn't even have the right collar for Tanner until Stephen opened my eyes up to that. Right? I mean, you can't train a silverback gorilla with a ping pong paddle. You know, you gotta go get a log, right? And you can't train a poodle with a log. You got to go get a ping pong paddle. And so it's not necessarily the tool is important, but I think to answer that question from my perspective was it's not really the pressure that's important. Once you understand how much pressure the dog can take, it's about how to apply it and when to apply it in those circumstances that helps your dog understand what it is. So erasing the question, what if my dog's too soft and can't take a lot of collar pressure? I mean, the simple answer is turn your collar down. But when you correct, whether I correct Coy or Tanner for the same exact mistake, it's the same correction, just at a different level. But it's the same, okay, I'm correcting my dog because it did this. This is when I have to do it and how I have to do it, not how much do I have to give it.
That's correct. You know, the easy way to say that is I always make sure to point out, make the punishment match the crime. You know, you don't body slam a dog for a minor infraction, and you don't nag them when they're being blatantly out of line. And that's exactly what Tanner was being, blatantly out of line. And I'm sure you remember I said, I'm not going to correct all these little bad behaviors, because if I do that, he's going to check up just enough to not do a huge violation. And I want a huge violation so that I can make an appropriate correction. That was what we were looking for, what we were looking to set up. And guess what? We did, and it worked. And we highly, you know, that wasn't putting a Band-Aid on a situation. That was reassociating a behavior to a situation. And I would be remiss, Mr. Instagram himself, Brandon Thiem, incredible photographer, also that very morning got to kill his very first Nebraska duck.
Which was a female hooded merganser.
I have yet to see that picture on Instagram. Oh, those pretty birds.
Dude, in 31 years that I've been hunting the North Platte River, that's the very first hooded merganser I've ever seen killed in my possession.
Yeah, on top of that.
It was. And we did that for Tanner. Normally, we would never do that. We did that because we went to a spot. You know, we didn't want to put a lot of pressure on some of the holes that we had some paying clients come to. We were dog training, so we went to a spot that was lean of ducks, but the first one that came in was a hooded merganser female. We shot it for Tanner, and I'm glad we did, because it was, you know, it turned into a lesson that became one of the most pivotal points in my relationship with Tanner came to fruition on that day. I mean, that was awesome.
It was even better. We didn't shoot that out of the sky. We water swatted that thing.
You
and I were talking about it. And we were talking about, you know, what we needed to do. Brandon's sitting over there on the other end of the body. It's like, guys, a mercanser just landed in the decoys, and we both looked at Brandon.
Shoot him!
Shoot it!
Dude, we need that duck.
He said it's a hen. I swear it don't matter. Shoot it! He hated. Oh, he hated for that to be his first
Nebraska
duck. And I said, Bubba, there's never a second chance to have a first time.
You only get your first chance to do something once, right?
Oh, it was great.
That was funny. But yeah, we this season was definitely a stepping stone because again, I'll go back and reiterate what we said before. A lot of people populated the show early on. All the things that we worked on, all the tune-up drills, all the down the shore blinds, all the marking, all the things that we worked on really hard that you go back and review the videos that we did last summer through this whole COVID period. Tanner did remarkably well. I mean, extremely well. And the things that I didn't anticipate are things that I didn't work on because I didn't know he was going to do those things. And they just popped up out of the blue. And, it was such a great experience for me. I'm not going to lie to you. I went from, thinking, should I just sell this damn dog? Because he is getting on my nerves right now. And this is just bugging the crap out of me that he's whining. He's acting like he's out of his mind. I'm like, should I slip him a Valium or something? Because he is out of it. Like his eyes are spinning, like Hong Kong Phooey, man. And then, Steven showed up and within 13 seconds gave me the correction, the lesson and correction that I needed. And now, I'm in love with my dog again. We spoon on the floor on the beanbag. we're buddies, and it is a really great feeling to be in that position and to be able to get those results.
Well, it was a great time. It was a great experience, and we're gonna have. I'm sure we're going to come up with plenty of different ways to look at this perspective to improve the relationship between you and Tanner. But as I pointed out last year, this is an accidental documentation of the beginning of an addiction. I told Jake, I said, this is the kind of stuff that when you start doing this, you end up with a big shiny stainless steel box in the back of your truck that takes up all your bedroom and dogs everywhere because you get addicted to the process. It's not just the result, it's the process of doing the work that gets really fun. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you know how broken my heart will be the day that Tanner moves on to dog heaven? Because of all the things that I will have gone through with Tanner to get him, like I'm sure 2 years from now, obviously Tanner's going to be a different dog. He's going to be more mature. Someone asked me how old he is. He's actually going to be 4 years old on March the 13th. So he's definitely coming into his mature, prime years. Over the next 4 years are going to be remarkable. And I'm going to be heartbroken when Tanner moves on, but it's all going to be emotional because of all the things that I've learned through that dog and through Steven and this whole retriever connection experience that'll break me down. Tom was asking, did these corrections also fix the whining issue? Yes, but I had to revisit that because when we switched over to goose hunting, he started doing it again. But I used the same correction to solve the same problem, but he wasn't breaking, he was whining. So it was anxiety either way, and I used the same correction to fix the problem.
And overall it did hold him in check.
Oh yeah. Now we had to hunt out of a cornfield pit one day when it first started getting cold and nasty. We had some goose hunters in. We went to a cornfield and we had a huge day. We killed the 6-man limit of Canadas in a snowstorm in a cornfield, and we did not have a dog pit. So I had to put Tanner in the pit with us. And can you imagine the anxiety that he was going through? Because I'm trying to focus on calling the geese and flag the geese, keep my hunters concealed. And Tanner's literally trying to get up like over my shoulder he's trying to get up so he can see, and I'm about to tear him a new behind. Like,
Well,
and I didn't know what to do there.
Well, here's the answer to what to do. You put a pit where he can do his job. I mean, you put a dog that's dying to work literally in the bottom of the pit where he could not do anything. I mean, I feel for him, and I feel for you because he knows enough about where he ought to be to make your life miserable in that regard. So, I mean, if that was him and it was me and I was fighting that fight, put a lead around one of those braces inside and snap him on the lead so he can't be crawling all over you.
I was thinking what I probably should have done was had a dog blind, a ground blind for him, pop-up blind, put corn over it. I mean, they weren't going to see him in the snowstorm anyway, and let him hunt from the blind opposed to being down in that pit where he couldn't see.
So, you know, to answer Tom's question as well, is whining, vocalization in general, whether it manifests in whining or, you know, barking or whatever, is typically one of the hardest things to rectify. There's a genetic predisposition to do this, and some dogs more than others. But if you let it get out of hand, it's very, very difficult to rein back in. You know, this was driving Jake crazy. It would have driven me crazy. But again, all that stuff was just Tanner's exceeding desire to go and it coming out in an undesirable manner. Everybody thinks that they want that high rolling, bust the door down dog until they get it.
You better be ready.
It was again, I stand by it. It's 100% the dog that was correct for the situation. Jake, it's not, I'll put it this way. The hardest problems that I ever have to fix are not when I have to change a dog's behavior, but when an owner has to change theirs. That's a way harder vice to fix than a dog.
I mean, what if you had a dog, you know, the opposite would be you have a dog that didn't have any drive. You can't correct that, right?
Yeah, and you know that goes back to another thing I said. I don't want to hunt with a dog that doesn't want to break. And I mean,
you've heard that many times. I've heard that many times from you.
I mean, that's what it ultimately boils down to. I would rather harness a beast than to beg a dog to do the work. And all of them are different. They all have their own personalities. They all take things different ways and have a different level of experience. What Tanner's got that most dogs, Tanner's picked up more ducks in a year than most dogs get to pick up in their lifetime. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, you know, when you get to work with a guide every day. So it was he's getting to do what he was born to do. I stand by my decision when I said that this was the right dog for you. And I knew it was going to be a challenge on your end, but man, how rewarding has the journey been so far. And I'll go ahead and tell you, you know, you talk about having your heart broke when he leaves. That's bittersweet. You know, one of the cool things about dogs is we don't ask them to endure what we ask our old folks to, you know, and when it's time for them to go, we let them go. And it's a cool experience. You know, you're always going to have the memories, and, you know, this is part of the hook. And my clients will tell you, you know, it's kind of like what's the potato chip commercial? You can't just eat just one. You know, it starts those that are born for it, those that have a heart for it. You know, it starts them on a journey of owning dogs for the rest of their life, and that's great because I have little kids. I got to put them through school, and it helps me put food on. So everybody can go. Let's buy us another puppy right now, and so that we can keep on pushing in the right direction.
There's a couple questions.
How do you fix or prevent head dropping? I have no idea what you mean on that, Mr. Joe. You're going to have to
elaborate. Why don't you elaborate that question and when you type it out?
Mr. Tom just made a very good comment, though. And this is something that I always tell my folks before they get their next dog is your next dog is not going to be your last dog. And that's a good and a bad thing. You know, don't judge your new dog with the same standard that you looked at your old dog. I see so many people shortchange their animals because rather than letting them grow up and be a puppy, rather than rejoicing when they do something right, everything's a big daggum hurry to get to the advanced work. They want to jump past all the puppy stuff. And there's something to be said about a dog that gets to experience life and develop a relationship and not just be rushing through the whole thing. It's all a journey, every one of them. And if you don't take the time to spend that social aspect with them, there's an immeasurable part of a dog that comes from them knowing that they're special, that knowing that they're unique, knowing that they're part of a unit, that they can be and it's sad to see people that buy their second, third, fourth, fifth dogs and they want to go straight into the work rather than experience the whole journey. And it's my job to do the work. Y'all enjoy the dogs. Let me fix all the problems. It's more important to spend that time getting them excited. I mean, that's just me. That's the way I see it.
There's that's all true. There's so much truth to what you just said. And even, when you get your dog, when you get a dog, I'm a testament to, not this is the first time I've ever bought a started dog or a dog, an advanced dog, that I didn't raise from, 7 or 8 weeks old. And the things that I noticed, that the progressions that I noticed this time, opposed to having a puppy and watching the obvious progressions, like you watch your child, when they're 10 months to 15 months old, they learn to walk. When they're 2 years old, they learn to talk. And you notice these progressions with an adult or a semi-adult dog like Tanner. When I got him, the things that I started noticing were things like, I wake up in the morning and when I grab my camo pants, he knows we're going hunting. Okay. He knows what time it is. He knows if it's 6:30 in the morning, he's still laying on his dog bed. But if it's 4:30 in the morning when I wake up, he gets up and starts doing freaking donuts in the carpet because he knows we're going hunting. And so you start noticing these things, that he starts taking on this character about him because he's recognizing the job at hand. When I go downstairs, I make coffee. He just goes and gets him a drink of water, and then he sits at the door. I go to the door. I open the door. He goes and airs and goes to the bathroom, and it's dark outside. My clients are still asleep. I open the crate door to the gunner kennel. I don't have to say, Tanner, get in your box, or kennel. He just jumps in and goes right in his box because he knows we're going hunting. So the feeling that I get when I wake up in the morning and I go to do a job, like, my biggest confidence boost is the fact that I have Tanner. He's going with me. He's my hunting buddy. He's my assistant guide. He's my conservation tool. He's doing all the hard work. He's picking up all the birds in the hard to get to places that I can't go to or won't go to. And I feel extremely confident when I wake up in the morning and I put Tanner in the box, that I know we've got some issues to work out. But once we work those issues out, I know I'm going with the right guy. Like, I have the right teammate at my side. And I think that's a testament to when you do have a well-trained dog at your side, that's how it feels. And when you learn things that I've learned from Steven in terms of having to correct some of these things, like, breaking out of the pit or whining or whatever it is, those things, every time I learn something, like, I gain more and more confidence within myself and more confidence in Tanner that we're going to go and do this the right way. And at the end of the day, as a professional guide, people walk away. I've had people walk away going, they didn't go, what an incredible hunt that was. They walk away going, dude, your dog is badass. And man, when they tell you, when they say things like that, then that's when all that hard work and all that dedication and all that training sort of comes to fruition for me.
Well, and that, it's funny you mentioned all this, because there was something else you said. Everybody thinks that in order to have a bond with a dog, you have to buy them when they're a puppy and go through the whole puppy stage. And as you found out, that's not necessarily true. You made the comment, I remember you taking Tanner home, and being so emotional about your family embracing him embracing them. You spent the quality time up front to help him understand where his place was, and you were like, just a couple weeks in, you're like, this is my dog now. He's always watching me. He's going where I go. He's following me. And there's always a reason. I told you this at the beginning. There's always a reason a dog is for sale. And everybody wants to find a deal. And in all honesty, that is often the worst thing that can happen when you find a deal, because you don't want to buy somebody else's problem. You want to find the dog that fits what you're looking for, that is the real deal. That, Tanner wasn't in the right situation. His owner was older, and Tanner was too much dog for him. That's why Tanner ended up with me. I swapped him the dog that he needed for the dog that he didn't need, and then I found the right spot for the next dog. So, if you do look at buying another dog, or buying a dog that is started or finished, or whatever the label that they put on it, look at the dog for the dog. There's going to be red flags. There's going to be, uncertainty, but there's also going to be that okay, this dog could fit in with me or not. And I would rather a dog not get sold than go to the wrong situation. So, obviously we've all endured that at some point in time. So, understand that sometimes the dogs that are going to be for sale for the right reason might not be the cheapest one, or somebody might have a huge price tag on a dog that's not the right fit for you. So don't buy somebody else's problem. Listen to whoever. I'll fall all over myself. I'll lose a sale telling the truth before I'm going to tell a lie about the dog or try to misrepresent him. I want everybody to know exactly what they're dealing with when they walk into it. I'll be like, hey, this is a really nice dog. Works really nice, but he's ugly as homemade sin. Are you okay with an ugly dog? I mean, there's always something that you got to help people understand. This is the compromise you're going to have when you buy a dog that's already an adult.
And you might not know, even if Stephen, who's articulate and can explain it to you in an intelligent, descriptive manner, you still probably won't recognize exactly what he's talking about until that particular characteristic comes out, because I really didn't know what Stephen meant. I just took his word for it. I just trusted Stephen, took his word for it, and said, okay, well, this dog needs to be a guide's dog. And then, a year into it, after the first season, and then going through all the training, everything got, it became more apparent. Okay, now I see what you mean. This damn dog has got so much drive, he has a hard time controlling himself. And I got to figure this out with him, or, I'm going to get frustrated. And this all goes back to all the things that we've said redundantly over the last hour and 20 minutes now, was that I did not know. I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know how to make those corrections. And I'm so lucky and grateful to have had the teacher that I've had to show me those things with the dog that he knows and understands, which helped me get to the bottom line much quicker. And now, like I said, man, if I'm going to war, which I do every day, I know that sounds cliche and weird and all that stuff from an outfitter standpoint, because all we're doing is shooting dumb birds. I shouldn't say dumb birds. We're shooting birds. But at the end of the day, when I wake up, I get suited up. I grab my gun, my calls, my tools, and I feel like, I'm kind of going to war with ducks every day. And if I had, I'm sure I would, it would vary, but every single day that I go and let Tanner in my box, I feel really confident that we're going out there and we're gonna do a good job. And that's what my job is, right? And we've talked about that before, Stephen, right? A really good guide that doesn't have a well-trained dog is lacking something in his toolbox. He's lacking something in his character. He's lacking something in his knowledge. And I feel like, the impression, it's not about my ego, but the impression that we put out when Tanner does his job reflects back on me and my job as well.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because that's something else that was happening that we did problem solve. You say it's funny to me. You say with great confidence how almost cathartic it is that when you open the door, he jumps in the box and he's doing his thing. Do you not remember calling me and saying, Steven, this dog is going nuts in the box? Like he knows when I turn off an I-80 and start when he hits gravel roads or hits country roads, he's going nuts in the box. What to do about it? And I pointed out to Jake, that's him doing that in the box on the way to go hunting is not desirable behavior. He's actually losing control of himself in the box before he ever gets to the blind. How's he going to hold himself in check in the blind if he doesn't hold himself in check in the box? And I also know this is one of my personal pet peeves, and I'm not condemning anybody else, but it is what it is. I hate a dog barking on my truck.
Oh, it drives me nuts.
Imagine, okay, you have two boxes in the back of your truck. I have 28.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be a rolling, it's going to be a circus and a half. You let a couple of them get going, and then all of a sudden you have lost control. And so I also knew that Tanner doing that was a mental break on his part, and that he was capable of keeping himself together. And once we got Jake the right collar, he was talking about coming from Colorado. He was driving to Prairie Rock, and when he turned off I-80, he would start. I said, well, put the collar on the dog when you leave Colorado, and don't say another word about it until he starts raising sand. And when he does, stick your hand out the window with that transmitter, tell him to be quiet, and make him do a backflip in the box, and he won't make another sound. And did it work?
Absolutely.
But
100%.
And that's because he knew he was doing wrong. He knew he was violating. He just didn't believe you would take the time and the effort to fix that.
I really didn't even have to correct him. I just put the collar on him.
Oh, you never had to? I thought you said you got a big correction in for.
I did. I have, but now I don't have to do anything. I just put the collar on him, and he does. It was a big correction that solved the problem.
So in that case, what we're saying is that the collar in that point, it doesn't represent the severity of the punishment rather than the certainty of being caught.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about what collar are we referring to, Mr. Tom, I mean, without getting into brand dispute, we went from a consumer grade collar to a pro level collar is essentially where we jumped there. In particular, I got Jake a Dog Edge RT, which stands for Retriever Trainer, and he just got off the lower grade, house pet style transmitter and collar to a more professional grade. There's great collars all the way across the board. There's more than one great manufacturer. I just sent him, my go-to tool. So
I'll say I can say it. I'm not a pro. I don't have no leverage in this game. I mean, I had a Garmin Pro 550 because I had always had Tritronics. When Garmin brought Tritronics, I just, it was really more or less brand loyalty than anything. And I thought, well, any collar that's got a 1 to 8, pressure level, impulse level on it is going to be fine because 8's going to be hot and 1's going to be not. And so at the end of the day, an 8, even a continuous 8 on Tanner was a, it wasn't a, what was that? It was really just give it to me. I can take anything you can dish out. You cannot hit me hard enough with this, and I'll prove it to you. That's really what I was getting with that collar. Now, is that collar okay for koi? Oh, yeah, it's more than enough. I have to turn it down on koi, okay? But then when Steven turned me on to the Dogtra Edge RT. You know, we've talked. He explained everything to me. The impulse, the way that it produces the impulse, and the arc that it produces, and how it affects the dog is completely different than what the Garmin does. And 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 so while it may or may not be hotter, it has a more effective impulse than what I was using. And I immediately noticed the difference when I put that collar on Tanner. Do I need that collar? I mean, would I keep buying that collar? Yeah, because now I know what it is, or at least I'm better knowing what it is. But do I need that collar for every dog that I'll ever have the rest of my life? Probably not, but I definitely needed that collar for Tanner. And it's a much more effective tool.
This is a whole different conversation. I mean, we could talk a long time about this, but to be honest with you, when this goes back before Garmin, you know, I was a Tritronics man backwards and forwards. I love, if I still could have my choice of the collar that I want, it's the original Pro 500 that Tritronics made. So I love the way that Tritronics stimulation levels work. I love the way that it pulses on a continuous. And what Jake's talking about is how much I explained to him the difference in the sensation of the collar, the difference in the way that Dogtra works, the difference in the way that Tritronics work. They both have their fit. They both are great for certain things. You know, a softer dog in a Garmin is zero issue at all. You know, with Tanner, it was nothing but a gnat biting an elephant on the behind is what it boiled down to. There's good and bad to all of them. You know, I don't have an official representation for any brand. I have a fondness that goes back to Tritronics that will never ever be erased. And I hated nothing more. Understand this. I am a consistent guy. I am a you use it if it works, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it guy. And it pained me to all degree to have to leave from using Tritronics. I can't say that enough. I love their product. But it just changed a little bit, and I had to go with something that could give me a little bit more. And Dogtra did that. So, before I lose sight of what's scrolling on the right hand side of my screen, Mr. Joe did elaborate on talking about his dog's head dropping. The reason, again, Mr. Joe, I don't know what your dog's foundation is, but I do know the reason your dog is dropping his head is because he wants to keep a handle on that duck. He doesn't want you to take it from him. So if this would have been my dog that has been through my program, I would remind the owner that sit does not just mean put your behind on the ground. Sit means put your behind on the ground and sit at attention. Put your backbone straight, don't turn your head, and look straight ahead. So if I see the dog spinning his head away from me, I'm going to tell him to sit. I'm going to use indirect pressure rather than say, give me that duck. I'm going to tell him to focus on sitting. And if he focuses on sitting and sitting appropriately, then his head is naturally going to come straight, and then I can reach and grab the bird. If I have a dog that also has that behavioral issue, I'm not going to reach on the inside of their head. I'm going to reach outside their head and essentially trap their head between my knee and my hand that's coming outside. So if they turn away from me, I've got them covered on both sides. But at the end of the day, that dog holding on to that bird is because in his heart of hearts, he believes it's his, and that is unacceptable.
And and let me ask you this, Stephen, because, you know, Tanner, that's going to lead to sticking, hard sticking, right?
Correct. That can lead to all kind of problems. You know, mouthing birds, dropping birds. Jake can tell you about all these things. It's funny how these questions are leading back more and more back to his bad behaviors. You know,
it pisses me off when they won't. I gotta add this, because this question and your answer is so reminiscent of what happened to me and why Tanner didn't do well in the hunt test game because he was sticking birds, which means he wouldn't give them back to me, and he'd eat the damn breast out of them if he could. Okay. And so the thing, and it happened on the same day when he made that big retrieve on that duck in the river channel. He was sticking, and I was getting mad. And Steven goes, what Steven showed me to do was, no, don't take the bird, don't reach down, because every time you reach down, you're not mitigating, you're propagating. Okay.
Well, you were trying to rush it out of his mouth. Like if he kept it there longer, it was going to be damaged or he was going to tear it up, rather than holding him accountable to his behavior and saying, I told you, your job is not just to go get it, but to bring it to me and give it to me and give it to me appropriately.
And so instead of focusing on getting the bird back from the dog, Steven told me to get the healing stick out, and I focused on going back to sit or heal. And that made him come to my side, and I didn't reach down for the bird. I popped him on the behind with the healing stick. He came to heal. He forgot about he didn't forget about it, but he kind of forgot about the bird for a second. He focused on what I was trying to communicate to him, and I let him sit there for a second. Then I reached down and grabbed the bird, and he gave it to me like he was supposed to. I was like, duh.
Well, and this is where I point out that dogs are not the women of the animal kingdom. They're not thinking about doing 30 different things at one time. They're either thinking about pleasing you or pleasing themselves. And that's when Tanner was doing that, when he was being hard on the bird, when he was coming back and dropping it at your feet, or before he got to you, dropping it and acting like he was having to reposition, like he didn't know how to hold a duck. All that stuff, we want to directly address it. When indirectly addressing it is even better. If you make him focus on here and getting back to you with a sense of urgency, he forgets about wanting to mouth the bird. If he focuses on sitting with a sense of urgency, he forgets about mouthing the bird and acting a fool. And all that stuff went away when you use indirect pressure based off his foundational understanding of his foundational work. Okay, I got it. And you went from rushing to try to take the duck from him before he ate it to all of a sudden he's sitting there and holding it like a little choir boy. And I mean, it just baffled me to see you rush like that when it was unnecessary. You're rushing, and your sense of urgency about trying to disable the behavior the wrong way was exactly what was enabling the bad behavior to start with.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically it all boils down to dribbling and shooting free throws. Everything comes back to your basic skills and learning the foundation of the art of the sport, because when something goes wrong, it always comes back to the fundamentals. Does it not? Is that not what you've taught me for a year now?
Exactly.
We've been doing this for a year now, Steven.
And the other side of that is, I preach this all the time. Dog training is one of the only places in the world that a step backwards is a step forward. You can step back and fix it and then move forward, or you can continue to try to just band-aid it and always have that issue, which leads into Cheryl's question of how does she get her dog to understand to be still when there's not a pit or a hard barrier to help the dog understand where to be. That should be an invisible line that's attached to your leg. Your dog's understanding of heel and of sit is weak. So if I have a dog that's wanting to move while the marks are going off, if they're moving ahead and I'm backing up the other way, I'm trying to make the violation as big as possible. If they feel like I am there to hold them back, this is a dysfunctional relationship. That dog's got to feel like I'm there to help them. So if they want to get away from me, I'll go as far the other way as possible. So when they finally realize, oh my goodness, I have left my owner's side, my handler's side, and they get corrected, it's not a 3 foot, creep like they think it is. It could be 30 feet. And they turn around and go, my goodness, I left and look what happened. And that's all I'm trying to do is get the dog to understand that if they stay attached to me, if they stay in that little, we talked about that comfort zone where I want my dogs to stand next to me. They feel me there. If they leave that sensation, if they leave that spot, and they do it on their own and they want to go get some, go ahead. You're not going to like the result at the end, and you're going to figure out that I'm here to help you, not hold you back. When they understand the difference there, and I know I'm being a little bit dodgy on this, Miss Cheryl, because I want you to think about this on your own and really look at the reverse psychology of it. If you can take your dog's mindset and change it from being from her feeling like you're there to hold her back and flip it to her feeling like you're there to help her do better, she's going to be a lot less likely to leave you.
100%. I didn't know that, but I feel that, and I totally get that and totally understand that now. So,
guys, this has been fun.
This went longer than we thought it was going to.
10 o'clock on the East Coast, and I train dogs till almost a little after 7. It's been a long day. This has been a great conversation, but we're going to cut this thing short.
Mr. Joe, I can't bring Tanner to the St. Lawrence River, but ironically enough, I got to get up at 3:30 because I'm flying to Knoxville for the Bassmaster Elite on the Tennessee River. But I will definitely be at the St. Lawrence event. So if you're around, man, please come to the weigh-in and shoot me a DM on Instagram or whatever and let me know. Love to meet you and shake your hand and talk about dogs.